ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ ਵਾਹਿਗੁਰੂ
Vaheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Vaheguru Ji Ki Fateh. Thank you everyone for joining us today during Sikh Heritage Month. This year has been difficult by being apart from each other, but it's wonderful that we can all be together today through our screens. We're happy to be joined by Manvir Bhangu today from Laadliyan for a second of the 3 Daughters of Punjab events this month. Manvir Bhangu is a gender equality advocate, researcher, and community mobilizer. Manvir is a founder and executive director of Laadliyan, Celebrating and Empowering Daughters, a non-profit organization that inspires South Asian daughters of all ages to become empowered individuals through education, engagement, and awareness. Manvir also works as manager of operations at Punjabi Community Health Services, where she oversees the mental health, addictions, and geriatrics departments. In 2018, Manvir was honored with Brampton's Top 40 Under 40 Award by the Brampton Board of Trade. She has been involved in various qualitative community-based research projects with the Wellesley Institute, Region of Peel, United Ways of Peel Region, and St. Michael's Hospital. She has a BA in Human Rights and Human Diversity and Criminology from Wilfrid Laurier University and a Master's from McMaster University in Globalization and Human Condition. Today, we'll be discussing gender inequality in South Asian culture, and we'll be taking questions at the end. So if you have any questions throughout this talk, please type them in the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand and unmute at the end and pose your question. So without further ado, please welcome Manvir. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Thank you so much, Noor. I just want to make sure, is my internet okay? Because you were cutting out, so I'm not sure if it was on my end or if it's, can you hear me properly?
Yes, you can hear you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for having me. Sikh Heritage Ottawa. It's great to be here, and I was a part of the nonprofit gala a couple of weeks ago as well. And I am so grateful to have the Daughters of Punjab.
Perfect. And so, Manvir, could you just start off with, can you just let us know more about Laadliyan, like how did it start and what you guys do?
Sure. So Laadliyan actually started a long time ago. It started 2013 as a Facebook page. And at that time, it was just, it wasn't the organization or it wasn't incorporated. It didn't have nonprofit status. It was just something that I wanted to start because I knew growing up that there were certain things that, or our community that existed within our community that really, put girls against boys and sons. And I really wanted to draw attention to those things. And I had heard a lot of stories around that time. This was in 2013. So I had heard a lot of stories around female infanticide taking place in India and how that impacts families and communities. It's kind of where it started. And in my family, we have I have a younger sister and we have an older brother. So my family, my mom was always calling my sister and I her Laadliyan, and that's kind of where it started. And slowly over time, from a Facebook page, it became a community there. I started doing some programming, mostly raising money to send back to India for a lot of different homes in India for daughters. And there's 2 in particular. One is Unique Home for Girls and one is Jyoti Swarup Kanya Asra. and they're both in Punjab. And for about 4 years, we did fundraisers every year to raise lots of money and send it back there to support them. But then over time, the girls that were here in Canada and in my area, which is Brampton, they started saying, well, what are you going to do for us here? There's so much that we're going through here that we really want to talk about and share and, learn from each other about. So that's kind of where I'm like, okay, let's incorporate this. And Laadliyan became a nonprofit organization with nonprofit status. And we started doing programming locally within Brampton, Mississauga, Caledon. And now, thankfully, in a weird way, thankful to the pandemic, we're able to do programming all across the world, which has been really neat as well. So started out kind of like a blog post on Facebook, and then now it's a nonprofit organization.
That's really amazing how it just started off something very small and has a huge impact now. And so what are some activities or things that you do through Laadliyan?
It differs. I mean, in the beginning, we used to do, like I said, mostly fundraising and awareness types of activities. But over time, we've kind of seen, I know like when I was younger, I really wish there was more people that I could speak to when it comes to how, when you're going to grow up, it's going to be like this, or when you go to university, these are your options. So that was something that I always wanted to incorporate into Laadliyan from the very beginning. And so a core component of all of our work is mentorship. And that being said, I think because we're an immigrant community and we're fairly new, we don't have a lot of roots so far in terms of mentorship. We don't have a lot of scholarships. We don't have a lot of clubs that young women or men could join when they're in school, or young kids when they're in middle school that they can join and learn from, or people that we can reach out to. So I think we really lack that as a community, and I always wanted to build on that by creating positive alliances in the community for younger girls who have older sister-like, role models in the community that they can look up to and learn from. So that's one of the core components of Laadliyan is our Laadli to Laadli mentorship program, which is for anyone who is 14 plus, who identifies as South Asian and who identifies as a young girl or woman. There's no max age. You can be as old as you'd like. We only ask 14 because I think at that age is when young girls start to think or start to feel that they have to think about their career or their academic path. So, when you're in grade 9, you start to think about, I want to be this when I'm 18, even though you have no idea when you're 18, what your life's going to look like. So mentorship is one of those core components of Laadliyan. Another thing that we do is we have a really great program called BG and Me. And BG and Me is a program between South Asian grandmothers and granddaughters. And the premise of that program is to really create more understanding between the two generations. And this program came out of research that we had done with St. Michael's Hospital on son preference and sex-selective abortions. And from that research, I had done some focus groups with grandmothers, and I found like a lot of negative comments were said about the birth of a daughter by a lot of the grandmothers in that focus group. And I really felt like we needed to change the narrative around that. And so we kind of took that concept and we spun it in a way that every month we get together, and there's no age limit. You can be a young granddaughter or an older granddaughter. We get together and we do an activity where both generations are learning and teaching from each other. And it's something that, whether it's food, like how do we share recipes. So one thing we did a couple of years ago was like made Indian style pizza. So pizza is something that younger kids love. And spices are something that a lot of our grandmas love. So we made like an Indian style pizza together. Since the pandemic started, it's been all virtual, but it's still been great to do that. We actually have one coming up called Plant Your Seed, and it's about mental wellness between two generations. And that's going to be next Thursday, I believe, or this Thursday, sorry. And another program that we have is so recently we've noticed that a lot of international students are, coming to Canada, and they don't necessarily have the support systems that they need, especially the young women that are coming. And we created a program called Udari. And if those who don't know what Udari means, the word means leap. So literally they've taken the leap of faith and come to a different country. And a lot of them are alone here. And through that program, we've created a support group for them, a support system for them where they can come to us and ask us about legal support, ask us about academic support, food. If they don't have access to food, we can support them there. If they don't have access to rent, we can support them there. and just educating them and creating awareness in their worlds around their rights as employees, their rights as students, their rights as tenants. Unfortunately, due to the pandemic, a lot of them got, they were abused or they were taken advantage of in various ways. And we've really tried to raise awareness around that. And to supplement that, we have something called the International Student Fund, where if a young woman is here and she's lost her job because of COVID and she needs to make her rent, we then ask the community to raise some money and support her in the short term, as well as provide anything else they may need in that much time. And another great initiative that we have is called the Laadliyan Care Package, and that is an amazing program that we have in partnership with Seva Food Bank in Malton, where we provide them with menstrual hygiene packages every month to give out to their clients. We noticed that while the Sikh community loves to donate, there was very little donations coming of menstrual hygiene products, which are essential and necessary. But we saw lots more donations of diapers and other things, but they didn't have a lot of donations of those. So we've made sure that since 2018, they've been able to give ample amounts of menstrual hygiene products to anyone who walks through those doors. And that is a community project as well. Any community member can purchase it from our website, and we go and collect everything, put it in a package and drop it off at the end of each month. So that's kind of the gist of what we do. And we also do a lot of research. We also do a lot of advocacy. It really just depends on what's happening and when we're doing that. So there's lots that we're doing, and lots of pivoting has happened in the last couple of, in the last year because of COVID as well.
That's amazing. Like all the work you do, it has like such big impacts with like the community. And just on topic of, you said the project of BG and me of like the age, like the differences, how we perceive gender equality and stuff. What have been like some differences like in like inequalities in the past versus present?
That's a good question. I think, there are some things that haven't changed. And I think anyone who has grown up, and I'm sure a lot of people who are here today can relate as well. There are some things that are still very visible that we can still see. But I think in the past, gender inequality, especially within the South Asian community, may have been more open, and it may have been more in your face, such as, the practice of female infanticide or feticide, which is a very touchy subject, but I think it was much more prevalent, and it was much more acceptable, several years ago versus now. Even just steps that have been taken to kind of raise awareness around that. Concepts such as dowry, which was like, it was expected when a daughter was buried, which was the reason that people didn't want daughters to begin with, was because a daughter was essentially quite expensive to give away. And I think those types of concepts, were more in the past, but we still have them today. They just look different. The concept of dowry we just don't call it dowry anymore, right? There's other ways of giving gifts to the in-laws and lots of other things. And female feticide is still happening, and this was something we've done a lot of research on at Laadliyan, where we're looking at how just the pressures that a woman feels to give birth to a son, and the types of things she may have to go through to make sure she gives birth to at least one son. And if she is not able to, then she may be taken back home to India there's various different methods or techniques that are used to give people the hope that they might have a son or a grandson. So I think those things are still there, but today, maybe people aren't aborting as many daughters, or they're maybe not killing as many newborn daughters, but I think daughters are allowed to live past a certain age. They're constantly reminded that they're a burden or that they were not wanted. And it's unfortunate, but I think the number of orphans living not even orphans, they've been abandoned, they have parents, but the number of daughters living in those two homes we worked with in the past, I think that speaks to, the kind of gender inequality that exists within India. Of course, it looks different in Canada, but that's what it is, here. And I think, again, the concept of having a son is still very much prevalent today. And I think people still want to make sure that families are able to give birth or have at least one heir, or, somebody to carry on the family name. And yeah, and we in today's world, we want daughters to be educated, but not too educated so that they talk back, or that they question us, or they question outdated cultural practices. We want them to be married at a decent age, but we don't want them to date. We don't want a life of their own. We want them to get married, and and we want them to have family. We keep reminding them in different ways that you at some point you better give birth to at least one son. And even something as simple as, and I think a lot of older daughters who older may be able to relate. If you're the older daughter, you get your license, for example, you can go out and be independent. That's so you can help out at home with the chores and everything else that needs to take place. So I think it looks different today, but it's still very much prevalent in terms of how the world sees daughters versus sons.
Yes.
Is my internet okay? Just know, I feel like I'm freezing.
It's a little choppy, but it's going very well. It's fine.
Okay. If you give me 1 second, I can connect to my hotspot. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Sorry, everyone.
It's okay.
Okay, I think we should be better now.
Yeah, it's great.
Okay, I apologize. Sorry, everybody.
It's all good. It's all good. I was gonna say is that it's very it's moving that girls are seen as the lesser gender compared to their brothers and their friends and stuff like that. And it's still prevalent now, but even that we're in Canada, which is really shocking in a sense that this is a completely different environment, and it still comes into our daily practices. And as you mentioned, you did mention some scenarios of happening in Canada, but are there any others more in household settings or in schools?
Yeah, for sure. I think. Are you able to hear me just now?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
I think in terms of how what some different scenarios may look like when it comes to gender inequity. For example, even the types of careers I think a lot of girls are pushed into, a lot of daughters are pushed into. I think within the Canadian context, at least, I know I had a lot of friends, and this may have changed over time. I'm also a little bit older than you, just know, but I know in a lot of with a lot of young girls when I was in high school, there were certain types of careers that parents wanted to push their daughters into, and the reasoning behind that was very silly, in the sense, if you become a teacher, you'll get March break off, you'll get, Christmas break off, and you can spend time with your kids, and you can make sure that you're at home with your kids. You'll get all of summer break, and things like that. I think where women could be soft-spoken, those kinds of careers, you weren't really encouraged to be something out of the box. You weren't really encouraged to be in a career that wasn't maybe as well known, or that didn't pay too well. You weren't encouraged to go try and being an actress or an artist, or even an engineer. And I think it's, even to this day, if you look at how the ratios of boys versus girls in certain programs, you'll see that there are more men that dominate certain fields. And of course, women dominate certain fields too. It's not to say that, we're not, the social work field is dominated mostly by women. Teaching is dominated by mostly by women. It's not that only, men are dominating certain fields, but I think the types of fields that you were pushed towards is one scenario. Another one, like I said, is kind of how you're reminded that you can't go out late, you can't stay out late, and when you turn around and ask why, there's never really a reason. And I don't know if anyone's ever tried asking why. I used to ask why a lot. There was never an answer. It was just because I said so, right? And I think there's lots of us who never took that as an answer. It was no, tell me really, why don't you want me to go? Why can't I stay out like my brother? Why can't I, just get up and leave when I want? Why do I have to give you my friend's mom's phone number before I go over to her house? And all of those things. And it makes sense as parents, they're worried, they're scared. Of course, it all makes sense now that we're older. But I think at that age, it wasn't clear why we were being asked, or why we were being told we couldn't do certain things. Another scenario, which I think is very prevalent still, in today's day and age, is the concept of what a girl should look like, what a young woman should look like. And you know, and these are comments that I think everybody must have heard at some point. Tall, you know, fair skinned, clear skin, you know, educated, slim, and all of these things. And it's like, if you don't fit into those, you're somehow not you know, eligible for whatever, usually marriage or usually some sort of a but I think those are still things that a lot of expectations that a lot of girls have to live up to. And I think these are, it's, I mean, you know, I'm at that age now where a lot of my friends are getting married, and some of them are still single, and they're being reminded every day, if you just lost some weight, you know, you would get boys asking you out. If you just, you know, clear up your skin, it would, and it's never the opposite. It's never, hey auntie, like, what about, you know, this boy, like, what about him? And maybe I don't want to be with him. But I think those things really, we still see those, and so many of us can relate to those. And to be honest, the impact of this is super scary, because I think when you tell a young girl from a very young age that she's not worthy, or she's not enough, or she's not, you know, she's not being celebrated for who she is, she needs to do better. I think, you know, those girls grow up with a lack of self-confidence. They grow up feeling unwanted. They grow up feeling, you know, crappy about themselves, and there's no self-esteem. And I think then there's a, you know, there's a cycle of that impacting your mental health. It impacts the decisions you make in your life. It impacts the relationships you get into. And then it's just, you know, it just carries on from there. And there's so many things that people don't realize how their words impact young girls. I remember when I was in grade 4, I wanted to be a fashion designer. And, you know, this was so long ago. And somebody completely burst my bubble at that age. And I never, ever even thought about it again. You know, who knows, maybe I could have been a great, I mean, I'm not saying I'm great at, I'm very artistic, but I could have been, maybe. I didn't even get to try. And I think those types of things, you know, we hear a lot. Whereas a boy, you know, I feel like boys can say anything, and they're just patted on the back for it. And so I think those are some scenarios too. And I think the constant reminders of, you know, you don't get a say because this isn't your home. Your home will be when you get married. So I feel like I've gone off a lot more than I do, but
No, that's perfect.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Like, there is this imbalance between how girls are treated versus boys. But is there like a certain reason? Like, do you know of a certain reason, like why girls are told that they need to be skinny and clear skinned versus why boys don't have that same type of pressure?
Sorry if I froze or if you froze, repeat that.
Okay, can you hear me? Hello?
Hi, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. It's all right. It all happens.
I am so sorry. I don't know what's happening with my internet today. Sorry, I missed your question.
Oh, it's okay. It's good. We're good now. Our question is just that, is there like a certain reason why girls are treated in a different manner than boys in the face of how they should look and when they should marry?
I can hear you, just Noor. I don't know if you
Okay.
can. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. So my question was just that, is there a certain reason why girls are treated in a different way of how they should dress up or how they should look versus how boys should look?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, and these are things that are quite historical and like, culturally at one time maybe they made sense, but I think it was the role of the woman in society and in the family back in the day, right? I think it was to get married and to produce children and to take care of the household while the men went out and earned money. And I don't think this is just relevant to one particular community. I think this is how it was across the world. And at that time, it probably made a lot of sense. But again, a lot of the burden of making money and keeping the family safe was placed on the men, which I'm sure is also not easy. A lot of boys have to live up to a lot of expectations as well. A lot of sons have had that pressure. But I think the daughters, or a lot of women, girls and women, their role was, to be marriageable, to be, married off as soon as possible, so that she can go into her home, her actual home, and create that home and make that family or whatever that looked like. And again, it doesn't necessarily fit into today's the way the world works today, but I think
Mhm.
certain practices are still present and certain thought processes are still there that people want to take part in. And I think the whole concept of is that is really interesting when we talk about the role that daughters play in a family. Technically, you're protecting your family's izzat, and that izzat isn't even you're protecting your father or your brother's izzat, right? The men of the household, their izzat. It's not your izzat that's actually at stake if you do something. It's what's going to happen to your family if you take a step that's not appropriate, or if you do something that's not acceptable. And I think that is something that we see play out in different ways as well. So as long as you just keep your head down and you listen and you go along, I think that is the concept of, or the idea of a good daughter in many families and in many communities. But we know that that's not happening anymore.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. Um, and how exactly do you suggest that like we could create more equality in our society to break down these boundaries that are faced by women?
I think everybody has to play a role in that. I don't think it falls on any one person or in any one gender to do that. I know the one thing that's been really great is recently, with the rise of social media, we've seen a lot of people come together and just draw attention to these types of topics. There's lots of groups out there that are focusing on these types of topics or these types of stories, which is really great to see, because we didn't have that before. We didn't have that when I was younger or when I was in
Mhm.
middle school. So I think that's one way we can keep sharing stories. We can also keep showing positive stories and positive examples of what daughters can do. And I think that's something a lot of families are missing. They're not able to see beyond the fact that this is a girl. They're not able to see what she's capable of. And
Mhm.
like I said before, because we're so new, as a diaspora, we're so new, we haven't really been able to. And I mean, in another 100 years or so, we may be able to, but I think there's still so much that our community needs to do to establish themselves, while we have women in business and politics, and in arts as well. Like, we see people who look like us now. There's still so much more that we need to do before parents, and community members and families think, okay, it's okay to have a daughter. She can go on and do great things, and she can make me proud. She may get married, she may not get married, she may have kids, she may not have kids. But I think we have to slowly move away from that defined role of what a daughter is supposed to be. The number one thing that I think we can all do more is call people out. I know
Mhm.
I get in trouble for it a lot in my family, but anytime someone makes a silly comment about somebody having a second daughter, or a daughter just as a first child, I do, I'm always like on edge, like when someone is making comments, and I talk back and all of that. And I think those things we need to do, because we can't be bystanders. And I think too many people have been bystanders. And another thing is empower our mothers and our grandmothers. Unfortunately, a lot of women take part in, in perpetuating gender inequality in our community. Son preference doesn't come from fathers, it comes from mothers. Moms are the ones that remind their sons that they're special, or that, my Raja Put, and whatever you want to call it. But I think those things are they're very connected to the way a mother treats her son, or a grandmother treats her grandson, versus the daughter or the granddaughter. And again, like, things are changing. We see that every day things are changing, but there's still a lot that we need to do as a community. I think fathers can empower their daughters more and have stronger relationships. A lot of women look up to their dads, and and I think a lot of us come from households where we have, not the strongest relationships with our fathers. Maybe they were working too much, maybe we didn't get to see them a lot, maybe, there's other things at play. And I think if we can strengthen those relationships within the household, I think those can be ways to kind of move forward and eliminate these practices. And I think just coming together as a community and really seeing how, not empowering or celebrating your daughters from a young age, how that impacts us in the long run. I read somewhere that children, we always say children are resilient, but they're actually not, because you see how many of us grow up with trauma that we're only able to realize, later on in our 20s or our 30s. Children need to be loved, they need to be celebrated, and that goes for sons and daughters. So I imagine what we could do if we did that to both, right? And not differentiate based on gender. So I think those are some of the ways that we can move past son preference or gender inequality.
Yeah. It's very strange, the dynamic that a mother would prefer their son over their daughter, because them being female too, they would prefer their son, which is kind of a crazy concept to like wrap your head around. But like, what would be some advice that you would give to a young girl?
Before I talk about the advice, I think we also have to consider the fact that sometimes it's not the mom wants to do that. I think a lot of times I've seen moms are placed in situations where, they feel pressured as well. Like, they need to give birth to a son. If they want to be treated right in their family, in their new family with their in-laws, they need to give birth to an heir. If they don't, then because if you give birth to three daughters versus three sons, you're going to be treated very differently. I hope not. I really hope not. But I think in general, that's a practice that we see. So I think, it's sometimes it's outside of the mother's control. But in terms of your question, on what advice I would give young girls is, honestly, celebrate yourself. And there's nothing wrong with celebrating yourself. I think we're made to feel really guilty for loving ourselves, for showing ourselves care and affection. We need to celebrate ourselves every single day, and we need to celebrate women around us every single day. It's really disheartening. I think sometimes I see, like, with the work that we do, there's so much competition, and I never understand why. But we don't need to do that. I think, as people who are going to pave the path for our younger sisters, we need to do it together, and we need to do it collaboratively. And I would just hope that if I have a daughter, she's not still arguing about these things, when she's 20 something. I hope that this is not something we need to worry about in another 30 years. But and for that, we need to start now. We need to start celebrating the minute, a daughter is born, just as much as we would celebrate a son being born. The minute that small achievements happen for us. I like to discredit a lot of my small achievements, but I shouldn't. And that's something that I've been taught from a young age, of just like, you can do better. You can do better. You know what? No, I've done great. And yes, I will do better. But right now I want to celebrate this success. And I think, calling out those or celebrating those small wins is really, really important. Another advice I would give, piece of advice that I would give to the younger girls in my community would be, don't let anybody tell you can't do something because you're a girl. Really, like, I think ask people, why can't I do this? And people will hate you for that. They never like answering that question, but do not take no for an answer, and just really question why do you think I can't do this? What would stop me from doing this? And the number one thing, which I always say, and I really, really, really want to ask everybody who's here today to think about, is provide mentorship. I think, mentor those around you, be or become a mentee. Like, if you feel that you're not able to, if you don't have siblings in your family that you can, or cousins in your family that you can look up to, especially if you're an older daughter. Like, I'm an older daughter in my family, and I didn't have cousins or or people around me that I could reach out to for support. You know, seek mentors, look out for people who can really guide you and answer questions for you without judging you. And I think it's scary. It definitely is scary reaching out to someone that you don't know. But we have a great program for that at Laadliyan too, so you can definitely sign up. But I think we really need to think about how we mentor each other and really build each other up.
Mhm.
And let's continue to create safe spaces for learning and sharing. And just like, you know, today, for me to even come here and share my journey and share my story without any kind of, and this is, you know, me being very, very open about Laadliyan and about my experiences.
Mhm.
I think we need more spaces like this where we can do this without feeling, you know, guilty or feeling that we're taking away from somebody else's story, and just positive spaces in general. I think we need more of that for young girls. So I would really say, if you're, you know, if you're a young girl or a woman, like, reach out to others. We're here to support you and we're here to look out for you.
Mhm. Yes, absolutely. Like women just need empowerment from other women to keep going. Yeah. And like you do so much good work through Laadliyan, but have you ever like gotten any like pushback by people, like any hate or something like that?
Lots of hate. I think that, and I think that's a part of, you know, the work that we do. You can't run away from that when you're out there. We've had a lot of people discredit any research we've done in the past to say that this doesn't exist, especially the concept of female feticide. You know, people really do believe that it used to exist and no longer exists, when that's not true. Um,
Mhm.
you know, sex selection is, it's a tricky subject, and it's a very touchy subject, but a lot of people have come up to us when when we've been in the community with a booth. They've read our research, like we have infographics around sun preference, and we have them in Punjabi, Hindi, and English, and we always take them everywhere we go. You know, we had an uncle who came up to us, he read it, he took it with him, and then he ripped it up. You know, like we've kind of seen things like that, and just but you know, we can't let those things dishearten us or stop us in any way. I think, again, it just reminds me of how much more work we need to do. I just look forward to the day that we can wrap Ladli up, because we're no longer needed and the world is a better place. But unfortunately, we're a little far away from that. So
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes. But I think, yeah, I think, you know, backlash is a part of it. We get it from women, we get it from other girls. We get it from people who haven't necessarily researched or haven't necessarily lived through those experiences. Um, we get it from lots of boys and men as well. We actually had someone create a group called Ladle and try to target us on Facebook, on Instagram that way. You know, so there, things like that happen, but again, it's not going to stop us from the work that we're doing.
Mhm. I mean, your work is amazing and it needs to continue going on. So that's amazing. And I think everyone wants to know, but how could you get involved with Laadliyan?
For sure. I think the number one way you can get involved is become a mentor or a mentee. So depending on what you're looking for, you know, I really would love to see even more diverse backgrounds for academic and professional backgrounds um, in our mentors cohort. We have a lot of women who are in law, a lot of women who are in medicine, a lot of women who are in teaching. We're really looking for mentors from various different fields, fields that are not so prominent, right? So fields that are not so
Mhm.
um, so well known, I would say. So if, you know, if you'd like to be a mentor, and it doesn't, you know, even if you're still in school and you know, you're studying something unique, I think it would be a great way for again, for you to give back to younger daughters in the community, and also to be a mentee. If you're looking to connect with older sister like adult allies, you can be a mentee. Another thing you can do is help us raise awareness. I think, you know, just things like calling people out when they make sexist comments, or just these outdated practices when you see them taking place, you know, just really calling people out, and helping us spread the word through our social media. You can also donate a Lodley Care Package, which is $20, and that is on our website. So if you'd like to donate that, you just purchase it, and again, our team puts it together and donates it to Save a Food Bank every month. You can also donate to our International Student Fund. These students are really, really struggling, and we really need more donations to support them during this time. And you can attend our events. We have a lot of events that are happening virtually, so you can attend from anywhere in the world right now, and all of our events are free. So please, if you'd like to get involved, you can check out our website, which is www.laadliyan.com, and follow us on social media.
Thank you so much, Manvir. We work with Laadliyan and all the work you do. And that was super engaging and helpful. And I know for a fact that everyone has learned a lot from your talk. And I know that there are some questions in the Q&A box. So I just want to remind everyone once again that if you have any questions, please put them down in the Q&A box, or you can raise your hand and we'll let you unmute and you can ask your question orally. And so, one of the questions there is here is, should we not start an equal inheritance distribution pledge program to reduce gender-based discrimination?
Why not? Yes, I think, again, the concept of inheritance is, it's still more prevalent, I would say, in India. Of course, it's still, it happens here too, but unfortunately, a lot of families have land back home that they're still hoping to give to their sons and not their daughters. And if somebody wants to support with that, I'm all in to start some sort of a pledge. We do try tackling this issue with a lot of families around what inheritance, what it looks like. I know of families that had only daughters, and they actually, instead of giving it to the daughters, gave it away to a religious institution because they didn't want their daughters to have the inheritance. They just didn't think it was right. So there are lots of dynamics at play when we talk about inheritance. But if somebody wants to support us when kind of raising awareness and around inheritance laws and things like that, at least back home, that would be great. I think that would be really, really helpful.
Perfect. And do you have any tips on how we can start breaking through the gender norms and roles in the household? It's tiring to hear, girl, I need to learn to cook and clean to become the perfect daughter-in-law, but the same is not expected for my male cousins. I've questioned it, but it gets told it is what it is.
I think you need to keep questioning more. And I think all of us have been there. The divide of even when families over, men sitting in one room, women sitting in one room, men being fed first. Can you repeat the first section of the question, just like the first bit?
It says how we can start breaking through the gender norms and roles in the household.
I think if you do have brothers or cousins who are who are closer to your age, and I know a lot of us have good relationships with our male counterparts, start to involve them. And I think that's something we're not doing enough. We're not involving boys and men in these conversations enough. And I think they have a role to play as well, right? When they see that they're chilling or they're playing their video games and everything is happening for them, somebody should call them out too, like, hey, get up and help. And I think, again, it might be new to them because no one's asked them to do that before. It's not that they don't necessarily want to do it, but it's just a new concept for them. Imagine if somebody told you as a girl, hey, you relax, you sit down, I got it. You'd be like, wait, that's not right. I should be helping because I've been conditioned to help.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, if we just rotate that and just, ask them to support, why aren't you helping? What makes you think you don't have to help? Get up and help. And I think I see a lot with a lot of, boys. I mean, definitely there's still so many that are really benefiting from being a son. But I think we are seeing a change in a lot of young boys and men who are able to understand, okay, it's not fair that my sister has to do everything. It's not fair that my wife has to do everything. And even the roles of the roles as parents are really changing as well. And I think we have a lot of great role models in the community who are showing people that it doesn't have to be done one way. So, just really putting it back on the boys or your cousins in the room. Hey, why aren't you helping? Your wife's going to make, she's going to want to see that you can cook too. Everybody's working these days. Nobody has time to do all of the cooking and all of the cleaning. So I think those are things, the reality of today that we need to be sharing with people.
Yes, absolutely. Like education is key for everything. Yeah. And a similar question to one that was posed before is that can we not start action against matrimonial publishers, especially newspapers that use discriminatory language related to gender, such as skin color?
I have tried to go after newspapers before. Unfortunately, it's not even, it's not just newspapers, it's any kind of media that runs with money that you need. They will post whatever they can get if they're being paid for it. We've actually seen ads for um, really harmful pills that you can get to have a son. And just like the messaging around that. And we really tried to advocate for that last year. And when we reached out to these newspapers, they said, we don't verify what we're posting. We just need it because it's print media is dying and they need whatever money they can get to stay alive, right? It's somebody's like bread and butter. So we have really tried to go, but I think there's a lot wrong with the matrimonial ads, with any kinds of other ads that are out there for sex selection, and there's a lot of them. For those who don't read the Punjabi newspaper or can't read Punjabi, maybe one day just go through it and you'll see images that are like, whoa, what is this? And I mean, again, we've tried. It's a really slippery slope because to the newspapers, it's literally their bread and butter, and they say if we don't get paid, then our business shuts down and we can't eat. But I also understand a lot of our community members read those newspapers, and we just reiterate these differences again and again, and it just perpetuates gender inequalities again and again as well. But I mean, and I always say this every time we have a meeting, if anyone has any ideas on how we can tackle these issues in a way that works for everybody, I am all ears.
Perfect, thank you. And another question is that I'm married but don't have any kids, and my mom said to me, I hope you have a son. It's hard raising a daughter. My mom and I are super close and have a good relationship, but this is coming from the way society perceives women, not because she doesn't want to have a daughter. So sometimes it feels like women in Indian culture are seen as a burden. Have you seen that too?
For sure, for sure. I think that the word burden is synonymous to the word daughter. I think we are. It's not that people don't want to have daughters because they don't want a beautiful little girl. It's that they don't know, and this is something that's been told to me a lot, is we don't know what her future is going to be. We don't know what's going to happen to us, and by what they're saying to that is we don't know if she's going to get raped. That's just their underlying message. We don't know if someone is gonna misbehave with her on the streets when she's out at night. We don't know what's gonna happen. At least the son will be able to defend himself. And it goes back to that concept of izzat. You're carrying a large burden of your father and your brother, or the males in your family. Their izzat is on your shoulders. It's not even about you, it's about them. And this is why daughters are seen as a burden. And I think the idea of getting a daughter married, and again, this is not just in the South Asian community or in the Punjabi community. This is across. I think this is across lots of cultures. We see the work that goes, or the, I mean, I don't know how familiar everybody is with the concept of Indian weddings, but the work that goes into an Indian wedding, and the kind of debt that parents go into on the girl's side, it's actually crazy. To make sure that their daughters' in-laws don't see them as any lesser than them, and that they don't treat their daughter any different once she goes into their homes. And I think there's so many different, I mean, we could talk about it for hours, but there's so many different things at play here when a daughter is to be married and to be given away, because parents want her to be treated with respect and treated with care and love. And that unfortunately comes from being able to give that family a son in many cases. And I mean, I am not an expert. I am not saying I know everything, or that everything I have heard is correct. But I would say from the work that we've done, these are definitely stories that have, reinforced these notions and these concepts.
Okay. A question that's somewhat similar is that, what are your thoughts on pink laddus given out when girls are born? It's a small step, but I think it's still not fair. If you give out the laddus, they should be the normal color for boys and girls. What's your thought on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea behind Pink Laddoo's initiative. Again, it's exactly the same way that Laadliyan is celebrating daughters. The idea of a pink laddu versus a yellow laddu, I would just give out chocolates if I had a daughter. I mean, as long as somebody is celebrating and the way that they want to. I know a lot of families don't do laddus. They do different sweets or some other different types of celebrations, whatever works for them. But I think, I mean, I don't want to speak on if that's, if that's fair or not. If a family wants, unfortunately, still a lot of people associate the color pink with daughters and the color blue with sons. And I really don't know why it's pink laddus. But yeah, I don't want to, I'm not sure how to answer that question.
It's okay. That's a good answer. That's a great answer. And there's one question here that asks about the inheritance and why is it that still in like the Western world that inheritance goes to boys? Well, it's a completely different dynamic compared to Canada versus India, and why it's still going to boys.
I think it goes back to the historical piece that I was talking about, right? Sons get inheritance because they're expected to take care of their parents in old age. A lot of parents have that expectation from their sons because their daughters are to be married and sent off to their in-laws, and they then are expected to take care of their in-laws. Whereas actually in today's world, you're seeing a lot of daughters who are taking care of their parents, right? Again, like the role has really switched. And I actually did some research with the Wellesley Institute on old age, or like the immigrant communities and how they're kind of ending up in old age homes and why that is. And a lot of people were living with their daughters in their old age, and they said, my son wanted to send me to an old, and there's nothing wrong with being sent to an old age home, absolutely nothing wrong. But if there was any parents, who didn't want to do that, the daughters had then taken them in because they didn't want to be there. So to answer your question, I think the reason that it's happening is because it's so historically, like it's been such a historical, it has such a historical significance in our community around what the reason sons get it is because they're expected, it's to pay them back for taking care of parents in their old age.
Mhm.
And when as a daughter, you're married off to another family, that husband, your husband is supposed to have his own inheritance, which you're supposed to live off of. So they don't want the husband and the wife both taking inheritance. It's not fair according to the unwritten laws wherever they were written.
Okay, thank you. And one of the final questions here is that have you noticed that families that have only boys, the boys treat women differently?
Differently how? I'm wondering, is it a good differently or a bad differently?
I'm not sure. It didn't say anything else, but I think just like how's the dynamic different between an all like boys versus an all girls household?
I've seen it go both ways. I think in some families, because boys are not used to having women around, they may have their mom or their grandma, but a lot of them may not have sisters and just kind of don't know how to respect women younger than them, older than them. And I think that's the more common thing that we see because they're not used to that. And also just the entitlement that comes with being sons. And I'm sure that if there's a family of only boys, that family is put on a pedestal and, celebrated in different ways. I've also seen it actually play out in positive ways too, because sometimes, that family really wants, or those sons really want to bring in a female perspective, and they want when let's say if those sons grow up and get married, they want to make sure that that their wives or their partners are included in the family dynamic and bring different values and different opinions into that family. But to be honest, most of the time, I think from our stories and from the people that we worked with, boys are not learning how to respect women because there's a lack of women in that household.
Okay, thank you. And there's one more question, and it is about the initiative of BG&Me. Is it still only for people in the area of Peel, or is it wider ranged?
It depends. To be honest, the reason that we keep it strictly to Peel is because usually we give out supplies for our workshops, and it just gets really hard to deliver them across all of the GTA or all across Ottawa, if all across Ontario, if that's what someone's asking. But the reason that we keep it strictly to Peel is just so we can deliver you supplies in a decent time before the workshop, and sometimes we have things we need to deliver after the workshop. However, if you'd like to take part, you're more than welcome to purchase your own supplies and sign up for the workshop. But most of our workshops do require supplies. It is a funded program by the Government of Canada, so we do have funds where we purchase, for example, I think we did a Zumba one where we purchased some fitness gear for the grandmas and the granddaughters, and then we delivered some yoga mats and water bottles afterwards. So just so that we can get to you in time for the workshop. But if you'd like to take part and get your own supplies, that you're more than welcome to join.
Perfect. Thank you, Manvir. And thank you everyone for your questions. That's all the time we have today. Thank you so much, Manvir, for taking the time to join us and talk to us about gender inequalities and about Laadliyan. I can speak from everyone is that it was such an engaging discussion, and we learned a lot about how we can improve ourselves in our daily practices and how we can improve gender inequality in our societies. And so thank you.
Thank you so much, Noor. And to everybody on the call, I apologize for the internet. I feel so bad. I'm so sorry. And thank you for asking your questions. And if you have any other questions, you can always email me. We have info@laadliyan.com as well as manvir@laadliyan.com. You can also just message us through our website and we can get back to you that way as well. But yes, let's just continue to celebrate each other and really empower each other from a young age so that we have a generation of strong, independent women coming up ahead. And then we don't have to work so hard at reminding everybody why daughters are important, because it shouldn't be a reminder. Hopefully one day we don't need an International Day of the Girl Child, because every day should be International Day of the Girl Child. Thank you to Sikh Heritage Month Ottawa for having me. And thank you, Noor, for the back and forth. You've been so great. So thank you so much to your entire team. It's been my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. And just some quick announcements for everyone. This year, Sikh Heritage Month has partnered with Manmeet Singh Puller Foundation to help raise funds to sponsor Afghan religious minorities and to help settle them in Canada. For more information or to donate, please visit our website, sikhheritagemonth.com, or the foundation's website, msbf.ca. This Friday, the 23rd, we'll be having a cuppa session at 5 p.m. Eastern, and on the following day, Saturday the 24th, we will be having a discussion about the first Sikhs in Canada at 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and at 5 p.m. Eastern, we will be holding a discussion to commemorate the 100th anniversary of Sakha Nankana Sahib. We will also be hosting our final Daughters Punjab event next Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. We'll be talking with Jasminder Kaur from Prosh and Political. If you haven't already, you can register for these events on our website, sikhheritagemonth.com, and you will be sent the Zoom links. Thank you so much, everyone. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.